I had so much doubt of myself when I was growing up. I doubted. I thought I was such a bad person. I didn't know why. And I didn't trust myself at all. I felt something off in my body. And I couldn't pinpoint it. And it led to depression and so much things. But I knew it. Can you relate to that? Do you have that feeling? Last night I went out to dinner by myself, sat at a bar next to an older woman who, well, had no problem telling me how she felt, how she really felt. She started to ask me questions about my life. She asked where I lived. I said I travel full time. She asked what I did. I work remotely, online. Well, are you married with kids? No, I haven't yet met my wife. Well, how long's it been like this? 6 years, a long time. Oh, now it makes sense, she said with a smile. What makes sense? Oh, it's just interesting, she said. Interesting. Yes, interesting. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in this situation where you're out somewhere and you get into a conversation with a stranger who seems to have had a revelation about you. Like God has given them some big clue about what you need to do or why you are the way you are. Well, the part of me that believes in astrology, like the stars can tell me what I need, or the part that pulls out an oracle deck to give me context on what to do next, that part of me knows that God speaks in mysterious ways. He's everywhere. So this old lady sitting there might just be an angel sent to me personally with a message from God. Now, I also had this thought. This lady got here before me, and I still saw her have 2 glasses of wine and a martini, so she might be crazy, but it's worth a shot. So I said, lady, you can't say interesting and then just stop. If you figured out something about me, please tell me what you got. She looked at me close, like she was sizing me up, took a deep breath like she was going to say something tough and said, son, you say you want to settle down, but for 6 years now, you've been traveling around, so it's pretty obvious you're running from something. Oh shit, this is getting deep. That's what the bartender said who'd been eavesdropping, but I wasn't sure that I could agree. It felt more like a fortune cookie, speaking generalities. Running from something. Running from what? I've been following breadcrumbs. I've been living with trust. Every time God asks me for something, I feel like I show up. So if I was running from something, don't you think I'd know what? I might not know where I'm going, but I don't need to. So what? I'm not running. I'm flowing. This lady needs to shut up. And at this point, this evil little succubus was paying her bill and getting ready to go. But on her way out, she stopped to let me know, I don't know what you're running from, son, but it's pretty obvious you're running from something. And just like that, she was gone. And I was left alone with my thoughts, wondering if she was wrong or if she was right. And I'd been running all along. So I sat with that question for hours, meditated on it, journaled about it, scoured every part of my mind, replayed time in hopes I might find that spot I could be blind. But then I stopped. Noticed that I was caught in this loop of something I used to do. You see, I grew up with the repressed memory of childhood abuse, so my body felt off and I always assumed there was something wrong with me. So I was always confused because even if I felt something strongly, I would still doubt it was true. But that's not how I want to be. I want to breathe with certainty. And certainly there's hurt in me, but that just means I'm a human being. And not just any human being. One that got out of the dark and picked himself up and opened his heart back up to love and worked real hard to find his way back to trust. I didn't get this far because I'm running. It's because I never gave up. And I never will. Because if I was running, it's not from something, it's towards something I feel. It's the thing that I feel in the depths of my heart. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not far. It's the reason I'm here, why I came from the stars. I can't describe it to you, but it's as true as you are. It's the thing that gives hope when everything falls apart. It's in every poem I wrote. It's the core of my art. Like God left me a note I can't read in the dark. It's a feeling of home I have known from the start. It's a feeling of home. I just haven't found it yet. But I feel it. And it feels so warm and nourishing and soft. So I keep running towards it because I'm afraid if I stop, I will never find it. It's not a person or a place. It's all of it combined. It's a feeling more than anything, even if I cannot describe it. But when I ask God how I get there, he's awfully quiet, but I trust this feeling as my compass because God must have designed it. And please save me the lectures and New Age perspective about how home is already inside me. And if I keep searching outside myself, it will always keep hiding. I've read the books too. I know what they say, and I don't know how to convey that in some way this is different. This is not what that is. This is a glitch in the matrix where I already feel my kids like I'm moving backwards in time and they've already lived. It's such a strange experience. I don't know what it's like. It's as if I drift through a wormhole at night, go to bed all alone, but I sleep next to my wife. So when I don't wake up in our home, something doesn't feel right. I feel her. I feel us. I feel them. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. But is it possible to feel a lifetime that only begins when this lifetime ends? Like that movie I saw, is this real or pretend? Is the outcome already written or does the ending depend on the actions I take? Is this free will or is it fate? If the outcome's already written, can I make a mistake? Can I take a wrong turn, wind up in the wrong place? And if I'm following her, does that make this a chase? If I can run out of time, does that make this a race? But Father Time's undefeated and I can't beat his pace. But if the love of my life is the prize for first place, then I'll never stop running, even if I'm running in place. Because you're not here yet, which means there's some steps I still must take. And whether it's luck or God's grace, if a step's all it takes, then I'll put one foot in front of the other until I stand at your gates. And the smile on your face will let me know it's okay to finally stop running because I finally found your embrace. And you'll tell me to rest because I'm finally safe. You'll say, take off your shoes. I actually want you to stay. And it'll be true why I was never running away. I was always running to you. It's why I'm still running today. All right, family, I wanted to take a moment and remind you that if you are interested in the Artistic Entrepreneur Incubator, I encourage you to check the link in the description of this video because we are filling it up. If you are someone who has the heart of an artist and the mind of an entrepreneur, and you have a knowing that you could be great, you just need the community, the mentorship, the structure, the invitation into a space for you to actualize your greatness. If that is you, then right now, click the link and make sure that you take the journey with us. All right, fam. Deep breath. That poem is called Running. And you can probably hear the emotion in my voice and feel it from me. I've been having an emotional week. I've just been having an emotional week. And this poem means so much to me because it encapsulates why I find creativity to be so important and art to be so important. And it also is some of the most, in some ways, some of the most vulnerable poetry I've ever written because I didn't know what was going to come from it. I didn't know what I was trying to say. It was just letting my heart speak. And so I want to take you in this episode of Behind the Poetry. I want to take you behind the poetry and share a bit about how this came to be because I had been going through a breakup, shocking, like a lot of my poetry. And I went to Colorado and I was in, I think, Steamboat Springs and snowboarding each day and spending a lot of time by myself and healing, really doing a lot of healing work. And I would go out to dinner every once in a while. Mostly I like to get groceries. I cook and I don't leave, but at a certain point you start to go kind of crazy and I feel like I'm going to start talking to a volleyball if I don't get out into the world. So I was having a particularly tough day, and I decided that I didn't want to be just cooped up in the house again. So I'm going to force myself to go out to a restaurant. Went out to the restaurant, sat at the bar, and next to me was this older woman, probably in her 60s, and she had been drinking and she was very talkative. And so we started talking, and she asked me all these questions, and I shared with her how much I desired to find partnership and raise up little babies and have a family. And she asked me these questions about how I travel so much and blah, 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 and basically told me, oh, well, you say you want this, but you're doing this. So you're running from something. And again, literally the bartender was going, oh, this is getting intense. This is deep. Wow. And it was this conversation where initially I got triggered. And so this is the part that I want you to notice, because this is where I think one of the things that I'm really proud of having become in my life is someone who can get triggered and trust the triggers to teach. So being triggered by this woman telling me that I was running from something, this woman who'd never met me before 15 minutes earlier, I went, okay, what is triggering about that? Why am I triggered by that? And maybe the fact that I'm triggered means that there's truth there. And so I asked for more information. I asked her questions about what I was running from. Tell me, what do you see? I asked her questions. She didn't have an answer for me, by the way. But then I asked her questions about her marriage and tried to learn from her. And then I went home and I journaled about it. I really journaled. And this is a journaling practice that I think can be really helpful for you and has been very helpful for me, which is when you disagree with someone or someone's triggered you, what does it look like to go into a process where you assume they're right? So what that looked like is I took out my journal and I went, okay, so if I was running from something, what would I be running from? And play that game. She's right. I'm running from something. What is it? And as I was journaling about that, I thought, okay, the obvious answer would be commitment. There's a fear of commitment. Do I have a fear of commitment? I mean, I was in a 10-year relationship. I don't think I have a fear of commitment, but then at the same time I went, that didn't go the way that I thought it would, right? After that breakup, I got super depressed. It was very hard to get over, etc. So maybe I have such a fear of commitment because I don't want to go through that again. But I've been in relationships since then. I've lived with, I just went into this exploration. And in that exploration, I could feel the creative muse. I could feel the presence of the creative muse. And I often describe this to people as a creative, as an artist, as someone who wants to bring more of your creative energy into the world. One of the most powerful things that you can learn is your particular texture, the feeling of the energy of your creative muse. What does your creative energy feel like? So you know when the muse is present. And so as I was journaling, I could feel it. And I went, okay, so there's a poem here. And this is a different poem than a lot of my other ones where I'm telling a story. And it starts, last night I went out to dinner by myself, sat at the bar next to an older woman who, had no problem telling me how she felt, how she really felt. And so that was the starting place. I didn't know where it was going, right? I'd just been journaling about it, exploring it. And then suddenly I felt the muse. And so I started to write poetry. And there's a turning point in this poem, actually, where when I'm sharing, and I get to the point where I say, I grew up with the repressed memory of childhood abuse, so my body felt off and I always assumed there was something wrong with me. And I was always confused because even if I felt something strongly, I would still doubt it was true. And that line, which really encapsulates so much of my journey, where I'm getting emotional in this moment because I had so much doubt of myself when I was growing up. I doubted. I thought I was such a bad person. I didn't know why. And I didn't trust myself at all. And because my molestation had been repressed, I had no idea what was causing all this doubt. And I just, thought something was wrong with me. So it's really interesting, once I was able to uncover that memory, to realize that I had developed such a lack of trust in myself from that event, and I didn't even realize it. And I had to rebuild trust with myself. And that was a long journey. For those of you who might be on that journey right now, so much love for you. It took me years. It's still kind of part of my process, as you can hear, because in this poem, I realized that line, when I said I would still doubt it was true, I was doing it in that moment. In that moment, I was searching for if someone else, a complete stranger at the bar, knew me better than what I felt. And that opened my eyes when I wrote that. It opened my eyes to the fact that I was doing it. And that's why the poem shifts in that moment to, that's not how I want to be. I want to breathe with certainty. And certainly there's hurt in me, but that just means I'm a human being. And not just any human being. One who got out of the dark and picked himself up. And so now you hear me in this poem, you hear me moving through and basically saying, I'm done with that old story. I'm done with that old story. That's not where I am now. I've worked real hard to find my way back to trust and open my heart back up to love. I am not that anymore. And so the moment that I actually shifted my perspective on who I was in the moment, again, the poem shifts, and the poem shifts into, I'm actually sure of what I feel. I have a feeling inside of me, and I'm certain of it. I'm not running from anything. I am seeking that feeling. I am moving towards that feeling. And the rest of the poem is carried on that knowing. And there's a lot of sadness around it. There's a lot of hurt around it. There's a lot of longing in it. And I allowed myself to express and to be in that. But it was really an exploration at that point of, what is this feeling? I've never really put it into words. Truthfully, I've never put it into words. I've written poetry to a partner that I've never met before. And that's where that line where I said, it's in every poem I wrote. It's the core of my art. Like God left me a note I can't read in the dark. This idea that all of my poetry has carried this feeling. There's an essence in there. There's this feeling. And this poem, Running, was the chance for me to explore that. Can you relate to that? Do you have that feeling? Just like Neo in the Matrix. I use that all the time, where at the beginning of the Matrix, he's searching, right? Follow the white rabbit. And when he has that conversation with Morpheus with the red pill, blue pill, he said, "This, you've known something is off about this world." And I have only one other time, which I already referenced here. The interesting thing for me is I have a reference point of being correct in this. Meaning, I grew up with the repressed memory of childhood abuse, and my body felt off, and I always assumed there was something wrong with me. I felt something off in my body. I knew that there was something off about my life, and I couldn't pinpoint it, and it led to depression and so much things, but I knew it. And then so when I had the memory come back, the first thing that happened when the memory came back is I started sobbing, and I started sobbing tears of gratitude. Gratitude, because it felt as if for the first time in my life made sense. I was no longer a stranger in my own body. This thing that had the missing puzzle piece for my whole life clicked into place. And so it's been interesting, to say the least, because I had that feeling, I'd known it, and everyone, therapists or whatever would say, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. And it's like, there's something that I feel. And so what's been fascinating for me is that this has been in the other direction. While there's something off for me in this direction for years and years of my life, I've had a feeling of what life can feel like. I've had a feeling of love. I've had a feeling of my family, of partnership, of I can feel it in my body. And the closest way I can describe it is when I felt there was something off. Now I felt as if there's a potential, a possibility that is on, quote unquote. And I trust that. I trust that. It's my compass. It's guiding me. And so this poem was a chance for me to explore that. And I think it's really valuable, and why I wanted to do this episode to share with all of you is so you can actually see the creative process as a personal development tool. So I was triggered by something. Where do a lot of people stop? They try and ignore it. They brush it off. They blame someone else. Oh, that's that person's stuff. Instead, I take it into personal development for myself, and I say, I'm going to explore that. I'm going to explore it as if it's true. I take out my journal. I explore it as if it's true. As I explore it, I realize it's time for me to write a poem about it. Writing a poem about it will force me to start to shift into a different part of my brain. And so instead of just exploring it through journaling, which is great, it's a great step, the moment I turn it into a creative process, I activate different parts of my brain, and I'm looking at the situation in entirely new ways. And that is the process that I just shared with you of what got uncovered. What arose as I rode the waves, the ebbs and flows of that poem, the poem that started as a story that led me to a place where I got to let go of an old story and embrace who I am now. That who I am now, the neurology of seeing myself that way, had me take ownership of a feeling that I actually trust inside of myself. And owning that feeling inside of myself allowed me to write a poem that even now brings up so much emotion because I feel it so deeply, and I got to explore it and encapsulate it into a beautiful piece of art. And every time I say that poem, I'm reminded of my journey. Every time I say that poem, I am strengthened in my feeling. That art is now medicine for me. And hopefully, it's been medicine for you. Thank you so much for going on this creative path walk with me behind the poetry. Thank you for being interested in how to continue to use creativity as a modality for growth. I think it's so important. I hope I've been able to exemplify why for all of you, and for all of you who have a feeling. You have that feeling inside of yourself. I encourage you to trust it, follow it, explore it, and go make beautiful art out of it. I want to remind you that always, in all ways, you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. If this episode has been of value to you, please share it out with the world. Blessings, fam.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you are interested in building a life that you love through the 3 pillars of relationship, business, and creativity, then I encourage you to continue checking out more of my content, including this video, which I really think that you will like.